He walked into the gallery like any other dreamer. Paint-stained jeans, quiet confidence, and eyes that saw more than just color on canvas. Liam didn't need to impress anyone. Not with wealth, not with titles. But what he found there wasn't just art, it was Emma, a fiercely talented painter on the brink of breaking, or breaking through. She had fire in her strokes, but burden in her eyes. He saw it all: the debt, the exploitation, the betrayal looming in the shadows of rivalries and corrupt deals. But Liam kept one secret. He wasn't like the others. He had power, resources, a name that could change everything. Yet he chose silence, hoping she'd fall for the man, not the fortune. As her world begins to crumble under sabotage and deceit, and whispers turn into accusations, Liam must make a choice: stay hidden, or step into the light and risk losing everything they've built. Will truth save their bond, or destroy it? This is a story of love that tests limits, loyalty that defies logic, and a bond built on more than just truth, but sacrifice. Don't miss what happens next. Subscribe for more heart-stirring stories that remind us the greatest love is the one that dares to stay real. The rain had stopped just minutes before Liam Carter stepped through the tall glass doors of the Willow and West Gallery in Lower Manhattan. A soft drizzle still clung to his leather jacket, giving him a look more accidental than intentional. The opening night was already buzzing. Stylish patrons with champagne flutes in hand, artists making polite conversation, and critics scribbling in discreet notepads. To anyone watching, Liam looked like just another aspiring painter hoping to get noticed. And that's exactly how he wanted it. Beneath the casual clothes and rough sketchpad tucked under his arm, Liam was anything but struggling. A self-made entrepreneur in the tech world, he had quietly stepped away from public life a year ago, choosing instead to chase the passion he'd buried under IPOs and boardrooms: art. But tonight wasn't about his work. He was here to observe. That's when he saw her. Emma Blake stood beside a modest display of her paintings, vivid, emotional pieces with raw texture and haunting use of shadow. She wasn't like the other artists, who flaunted connections and wore their egos like couture. Emma wore a second-hand olive coat, her dark curls pulled into a practical bun. But what caught Liam wasn't her appearance. It was the way she looked at her paintings, like she still doubted they were good enough to be here. He approached slowly, not wanting to startle her. "You use a lot of ochre," Liam said, nodding to the centerpiece, a portrait of a girl staring out a cracked window, sunlight falling unevenly across her face. Emma glanced at him, a little guarded. "It's warm. It hides things. Sometimes that's all people need." Liam smiled. "Or sometimes it reveals what they've been hiding." She tilted her head, intrigued. "That's one way to look at it." "I'm Liam," he offered, holding out a hand. "Emma?" Their handshake was brief, but something passed between them. A quiet recognition, like two people who'd lived different lives but felt the same kinds of loneliness. For the next half hour, they stood shoulder to shoulder, walking through her corner of the gallery. Emma wasn't used to people asking about her technique or noticing the layers under her brushstrokes. Liam did both. He didn't talk about himself, only listened, genuinely, and that made Emma open up more than she normally would. "I almost didn't show tonight," she admitted as they paused in front of a moody self-portrait. "Why not?" Emma glanced around. "Rent's overdue. Supplies cost more than I made this month. And Victor, he runs this gallery, takes 50% commission. Sometimes it feels like I'm standing still while everyone else gets ahead." Liam's brows furrowed. "Why do it then?" She looked back at the painting. "Because this is the only thing that makes me feel like I matter." That answer struck Liam harder than he expected. He saw himself in her words. Back when he was 22, living off microwave dinners and sleeping 4 hours a night to keep his first company afloat. He remembered that desperation, that fire. Before he could respond, a voice cut through the air like a wine glass cracking. Well, if it isn't the Queen of Gloom herself. A woman with platinum blonde hair and sharp eyes stepped into their space. Her name tag read Sophia Monroe, and her tone oozed performative charm. "Hello, Sophia," Emma said coolly. "I see you brought a fan," Sophia said, eyeing Liam. "He looks the part, maybe a little too well." Liam met her gaze unbothered. "I like art that doesn't pretend to be something it's not." Sophia raised an eyebrow. "Then you're in the wrong gallery." With a smirk, she drifted away. Emma sighed. "She's always like that." "She's threatened," Liam said softly, "and people don't sabotage what doesn't scare them." Emma looked at him, really looked. "You're not like the others," Liam shrugged. "Maybe I just see things differently." As the night wound down, Liam helped Emma pack up a few unsold pieces. He didn't press for her number, didn't ask to see her again. But as he stepped into the night, the reflection of her art burned in his mind. He didn't know how yet, but he was going to help her, quietly, from the shadows, where sincerity isn't bought and love isn't earned with a name. The next morning, the city was already pulsing with life as Emma trudged through Soho, a stack of rolled-up canvases under her arm. She hadn't slept much. The gallery opening had stirred something inside her, something hopeful and terrifying all at once. Meeting Liam had been unexpected. There was something grounding in the way he spoke to her, like he actually saw her, not just the paint on the canvas, but the woman behind it. She didn't get that often. The coffee shop on Spring and Mercer was quiet when she walked in. The familiar chime above the door gave her a brief sense of comfort. Liam sat at a corner table with 2 coffees already waiting, flipping through an old art magazine like he had nowhere else to be. "You're early," she said, setting her sketch tube down and pulling off her coat. "So are you," he replied with a soft smile, sliding one of the cups her way. "Hazelnut, right?" She blinked. "You remembered?" Liam shrugged like it was nothing. Listen." Emma sat down, wrapping her hands around the warm cup. For a moment they just sipped in silence, the kind that didn't feel awkward or forced. Then she exhaled, long and heavy, and looked out of the window. "I'm 2 months behind on rent," she said suddenly, eyes still on the street. "Sold 1 painting last week, and Victor took half of it, and now he wants more." Liam set his cup down carefully. "More?" Emma nodded. "He called me this morning. Said the exposure from last night comes with conditions. Wants exclusive rights to any new work I produce for the next year. Claims it's a promotion opportunity, but really it's about control." Liam's jaw tightened. "Did you sign anything?" "No, but I think he's hoping I'll be desperate enough to agree." She laughed bitterly. "And he might be right." Liam leaned forward, his voice low and sincere. "Emma, you're talented. That gallery doesn't define you." "No, but my bills do," she replied with a sad smile. "I teach art at a community center twice a week. That barely covers groceries. I've maxed out 2 credit cards. I'm drowning, Liam. And people like Victor, people with power, smell that." He nodded, his expression unreadable. "What about family? Anyone who can help?" Emma looked down at her cup. "My dad passed when I was 17. My mom's in assisted living in Jersey. I send her what I can, but it's just me now." Silence lingered between them, heavy and honest. Liam reached for his wallet instinctively, then stopped himself. That wasn't the way. Not yet. Not like that. Instead, he said, "If Victor pressures you again, you call me. I mean it." Emma glanced at him, surprised. "You barely know me." "I know enough to see you deserve better." Her eyes softened. "You're a good guy, Liam." He wanted to say more. Wanted to tell her that she didn't have to struggle alone, that she had someone in her corner now, but the moment passed and she stood up. "I've got to drop these canvases at the studio before class," she said, motioning to her tube. "Thanks for the coffee." Liam stood too. "Can I walk you?" Emma hesitated, then smiled. "Sure." They stepped into the crisp, mid-morning air, the streets alive with honking horns and the rustle of lives moving forward. As they walked, Liam listened closely, about her students, about her dream of opening a small co-op for underrepresented artists, about how art was more survival than expression. Every word etched itself into Liam's mind. Later, as she disappeared into the stairwell of a brick building, Liam pulled out his phone. He scrolled through contacts until he found the one he hadn't called in months. "Hey, it's Liam," he said quietly. "I need a favor. There's this artist, her name's Emma Blake. I want her work featured at the Devereaux show next month. Anonymously. Just make it happen." He hung up, staring at the building where she'd vanished. She didn't need to know, not yet. What mattered was that someone believed in her, even if he had to do it from behind the scenes. A week later, Emma walked into her apartment holding a plain white envelope with no return address. Her name was scrawled across the front in sharp, unfamiliar handwriting. Inside was a check for $20, payment for a painting she didn't remember selling. She stared at it for a long time, flipping it over and back again, as if the mystery would solve itself. She had submitted 2 pieces to a small online art broker the week before, more out of desperation than hope. The broker, a boutique agency called Bramble and Finch, had warned her the market was slow. She never expected anything to come of it. She opened her laptop, hands trembling slightly. Sure enough, both pieces had been marked sold, but the buyer's name was listed as G. Clark, a name she didn't recognize. The profile was private. No reviews, no location. Just like that, her rent was covered. She should have felt relieved. Instead, she felt confused. Emma reached for her phone, instinctively thinking to text Liam, but then she paused. They'd seen each other once since that coffee at Spring and Mercer, another quiet walk, this time through a weekend art fair in Chelsea. He'd been kind, attentive, asking thoughtful questions about her work, but he'd said little about himself, and somehow, she hadn't asked. They were dancing around something. She just didn't know what yet. Across town, Liam stood in a sleek office overlooking the East River. He'd ditched the usual suit for dark jeans and a button-up, his face lit only by the glow of his laptop. Beside him sat a legal pad filled with notes, gallery names, curators, grant programs. Emma Blake was scrawled at the top, underlined twice. He'd kept his promise. Her painting now hung at the Devereaux Invitational's preview lounge, a casual showcase ahead of the formal selections. No spotlight, no nameplate on the wall. Just enough for someone important to ask, "Who made this?" Liam had contacted the agency anonymously, used a holding company to purchase her art, to avoid raising eyebrows. He couldn't risk Emma finding out. Not yet. Not until he was sure her success would be hers alone, not because of him. His phone buzzed. It was a text from Brooke Whitman, a veteran curator and one of the Devereaux panelists. "That piece in the lounge, the girl with the torn book? Who's the artist? I want more." Liam smiled. The piece was Emma's. He typed a simple reply. "I'll get you a name." Then he picked up his phone and called Bramble and Finch. Emma didn't know what was happening. That week, 3 more paintings sold. One to a startup office in Chicago, another to a collector in Vermont. And then, the email came. A small but highly regarded gallery in the West Village, Moralo and Company, invited her to submit pieces for their spring rotation. They'd discovered her work through a private recommendation, though the sender didn't say from whom. Emma stared at her screen, stunned. Was this a trick? A prank? She forwarded the email to Liam with the subject line, "Is this real?" A few minutes later, her phone buzzed. His name lit up. "Hey," he said, voice calm. "You okay?" I, I got this email," she said breathlessly, "from a gallery I've never even stepped foot in. They want my work. They want it, Liam. Me, Emma Blake." Liam chuckled gently. "That's incredible. You think it's legit?" "I know it is." Something in his tone gave her pause. "You say that like you had something to do with it." "I didn't," he replied quickly, "but I know you deserve it, and maybe the universe is finally catching up." She smiled, sinking onto the couch, relief softening her voice. "It feels like a dream, like I'm waiting to wake up." "Then don't," he said gently. "Just keep painting. The world's catching on." That night, as she closed her laptop and turned off the lights, Emma whispered to herself, "Thank you, whoever you are." Outside, the city hummed. And, somewhere in the shadows, her secret benefactor watched from afar, silent, steady, and already planning his next move. Sophia Monroe never liked surprises, especially the kind that involved Emma Blake getting attention. It had been 3 weeks since the Willow and West gallery opening, and whispers about Emma's sudden rise were trickling through the art circles like smoke in a locked room. Her name had started to surface in places it didn't belong, in grant application shortlists, in curators' private conversations, and, most annoyingly, in the mouth of Brooke Whitman herself, who Sophia had spent years trying to impress. And now Emma Blake, with her thrift store wardrobe and pitiful self-portraits, was suddenly the one to watch? No, that didn't sit right. Sophia stood in her loft studio, light spilling through the floor-to-ceiling windows, glaring at one of her unfinished canvases. She hadn't painted in days. Jealousy, she told herself, was beneath her, but this felt different. It felt like something was being stolen. She poured herself a third glass of wine, pacing. Then she stopped in front of a sleek black filing cabinet. Pulling the top drawer open, she flipped past old sketches, press clippings, and reference photos, until her hand paused on a slim brown envelope. Inside were photos she had secretly taken years ago when she and Emma were in the same workshop. Emma, ever trusting, had left her sketchbook unattended more than once. Sophia had snapped pictures of dozens of Emma's personal pieces, concepts that had never been shown publicly, designs that had potential, and now, conveniently, Emma's style was re-emerging in the market. "Let's see how the world feels when I beat her at her own game," Sophia muttered. She began printing out the old sketches. She'd tweak them slightly, polish them, and claim them as her return to introspective realism. After all, in art, originality was a slippery concept, and she had the platform. Across town, Liam was attending a charity gala hosted by a foundation he had quietly funded. He wore a simple navy suit, no tie, and stayed mostly in the background, sipping club soda. He wasn't here to network, he was here to listen. Halfway through the evening, he overheard a name that made his chest tighten. "Sophia Monroe," said a man in a velvet blazer, speaking to a small circle of artists. "She's previewing a new series next month. Introspective portraits, they say. Very raw, very Emma Blake, if you ask me." Liam turned slightly, just enough to stay unnoticed, but close enough to hear. "She's calling it stolen light. Heard it's personal work. Stuff she's been developing in secret for years." The words hit like a cold draft. Emma had once used that exact phrase, stolen light, to describe a concept she was developing, a series exploring the way children in underfunded communities find light in dark places. It had meant something to her, deeply. And now Sophia was claiming it? Liam's grip tightened on his glass. Later that night, as he rode back uptown in a black car, he dialed his assistant, Cam. "I need you to dig into Sophia Monroe's upcoming showcase," he said quietly. "Find out where the sketches came from, and let me know if any of them match Emma Blake's past work. especially her student portfolio. Cam hesitated. Liam, if you do this, you risk making yourself visible. You sure? I don't care. If she's stealing Emma's work, I want it stopped. Meanwhile, Emma sat at her kitchen table, unaware of the storm brewing. She was sketching again, really sketching, for the first time in months. The fear had eased. The sales, the gallery interest, the compliments, they had given her something priceless. Belief in herself. She reached for her favorite charcoal pencil, flipping to a fresh page. But just as she began, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You might want to see this. Attached was a photo of a promotional flyer. Sophia Monroe, Stolen Light, a new series unveiled. Emma stared at the screen. Her fingers went cold. The title. The style of the piece behind Sophia's smug smile. It looked too familiar. Way too familiar. The soft hum of rain tapped against the window panes as Emma stepped into her studio early Monday morning. She kicked off her boots by the door and turned on the lights, expecting the same quiet routine. Warm tea, her favorite playlist, and a few hours lost in charcoal sketches before teaching her afternoon class. But the smell hit her first. Acrid, chemical, off. She frowned, flipping on the overhead bulbs. Her breath caught. The canvases she had prepped for submission to Moralo and County, 6 pieces she'd poured herself into, were destroyed. Slashed, smeared, soaked. One had been doused in something oily that left the paint running like melted wax. Another was simply gone. She stumbled forward, heart pounding. Her sketchbook, her personal one, was missing from the shelf where she always kept it. The drawer where she stored her charcoal, graphite, and ink had been rifled through, its contents tossed aside like trash. Emma's hands trembled as she reached for her phone. "Liam," she said when he answered, her voice barely above a whisper. "Someone broke into my studio." He was already grabbing his keys. "Are you okay? Were you there when it happened?" "No, I just walked in. Liam, they ruined everything. My new work. It's gone. I'm on my way. Stay put. Lock the door." By the time Liam arrived, the rain had turned to mist. He found Emma standing in the middle of the chaos, arms wrapped around herself like armor. He scanned the room. Destruction with purpose, not random vandalism. Someone had known exactly what to target. Emma gestured helplessly at the mess. "It wasn't a break-in. No broken windows, no busted locks. I think someone had a key." Liam's jaw tensed. "Do you rent this place from Victor?" She nodded. "Yeah, why? Has he ever let anyone else in? Maintenance, deliveries, anything like that? I mean, it's in the lease, but I never thought—" She cut herself off, eyes wide. "You think he did this?" "I think someone who wants to control you would go to great lengths to make you feel powerless." She sank onto the worn-out couch in the corner, burying her face in her hands. I was finally starting to believe things could change. That maybe I had a shot. Now I'm back at 0. Liam knelt beside her. "You're not at 0. Not even close. Whoever did this, they're afraid of you. Afraid of what you're becoming." Her voice cracked. "Then why does it feel like I'm losing?" He wanted to tell her everything. About the anonymous sales, the connections he'd used, the silent strings he'd pulled to lift her work where it belonged. But not now. Not when she was this raw. Instead, he said, "You're not alone in this. I promise." That afternoon, Emma's phone buzzed. Again. This time, it wasn't a message. It was a post. Sophia Monroe, radiant in a silky emerald blouse, stood in front of a large canvas in a downtown gallery. Behind her hung a portrait eerily similar to one of Emma's stolen sketches. The same posture, the same broken window motif. Only Sophia had stylized it, added gold foil to the edges, and titled it Caged Hope. The caption read, "Years of quiet creation finally ready to meet the world. Come see the truth I've waited to share." Emma's stomach dropped. She clicked through more photos. Sophia smiling beside collectors, clinking glasses with Victor in one shot. Her mouth went dry. "He's backing her," she whispered. Liam, reading over her shoulder, clenched his fists. "She didn't just take your ideas," he said slowly. "She's trying to erase your voice before it can be heard." Emma blinked back tears. "I can't prove any of it. The only sketches I had were in that notebook, and now it's gone." Liam looked at her. Really looked. At the ache in her eyes, the stubborn courage under her pain. He stood. "Then we'll find proof. I'll find it." She looked up. "Why are you doing all this for me?" He paused, searching for words. "Because no one ever did it for me, and you don't deserve to fight this alone." Liam hadn't slept. By morning, he was back in his apartment. Suit jacket thrown over a chair, coffee gone cold on the table. His mind raced with possibilities, trying to thread together the pieces of Sophia's betrayal. He didn't just feel angry, he felt responsible. Emma trusted him, and though she didn't know it yet, he'd already been protecting her in secret. But this called for more than quiet support. It called for action. He picked up his phone and dialed Cam. "Did you find anything?" Cam's voice was groggy but alert. "Yeah. Sophia's show next week? She's submitting 6 large-scale portraits. I got previews. 3 of them are almost identical to sketches in Emma's student portfolio." "Are you sure?" "I cross-checked with files from that workshop they took years ago. The poses, the color palettes, even some titles. Sophia's definitely using Emma's early work as inspiration, and I use that word generously." Liam sighed, rubbing his temple. "I need hard evidence. I already pulled metadata from the leaked gallery promos. I'm working on getting timestamps on the photo uploads too. If we can show Emma's originals predate Sophia's versions, it might hold up." "And Victor?" Cam hesitated. "He's quietly funding Sophia's relaunch. His name isn't on the promo material, but the gallery lease comes from one of his shell companies. It's dirty." Liam's jaw tightened. "Keep digging, and check security cam access near Emma's studio. If Victor's people were there, I want faces." Meanwhile, Emma sat in a laundromat across from her apartment, watching the dryer spin like it held all her thoughts. She hadn't painted since the sabotage. Every time she picked up a pencil, her hand hesitated, as if afraid to create something that could be stolen again. But there was something else, something nagging. An instinct. This wave of opportunity, the collectors, the sales, the gallery interest, it had started before she went viral, before anyone in the mainstream knew her name. It was too fast, too sudden. And yet, always just when she needed it most. Emma stared at her phone, thumb hovering over Liam's contact. Something in her gut told her to ask, but her heart resisted. She wanted to believe in coincidence, in momentum, in fate even. She pocketed her phone. That evening, a plain manila envelope arrived at her door. No note, no return address. Inside were printed screenshots, timestamps, image files, and side-by-side comparisons. Emma's sketches, Sophia's altered copies, dates that proved Emma's work came first. She sat down slowly, heart thudding. Who sent this? Her phone buzzed. Liam. "If you're free tomorrow, I know someone who can help restore the pieces that were damaged. No pressure." Emma stared at the message, then looked back at the envelope. It was him. Had to be. She didn't know how or why he was doing it, but Liam was fighting for her. At the restoration studio the next morning, Emma met Julia, an art conservator with a calming presence and deft hands. Liam introduced them like casual acquaintances, but something in Julia's warmth hinted at more, like she'd been briefed on more than just oil damage. "These are beautiful," Julia said gently, unwrapping the first of the damaged canvases. "We can bring this back. It'll take time, but it's not lost." Emma's eyes watered. "Thank you." Liam stepped aside, giving them space. But as he watched Emma quietly hand over her work, he felt something shift. This wasn't just about art anymore. It was about trust, and he was running out of places to hide. That night, as Emma walked home alone, she stopped by a park bench and pulled out a small notebook. She began sketching. For the first time in days, her lines were steady. And miles away, Liam stood on his balcony, watching the lights of the city shimmer against the river. He knew what he had to do. If Sophia struck again, he'd be ready. But soon, he'd have to stop hiding. Because love, if it was going to mean anything at all, had to be honest. Even if the truth came at a cost. The sound of clinking coffee mugs and murmured conversations filled the small cafe on the Upper West Side. The kind of place with chipped marble tables and local artists' work hanging on exposed brick walls. Emma sat across from Liam, stirring honey into her tea, her eyes distant but focused. "This place always feels like breathing room," she said, glancing around. "I used to come here after bad days at the studio." Liam smiled softly. "You've been having a lot of those lately." She met his gaze, and yet, somehow they've gotten easier. There was a silence that lingered between them, warm, not heavy. Over the past few weeks, Liam had become her anchor. He never pushed, never made her feel like a burden. When she called in the middle of the night, panicking over a deadline, he'd talk her through it. When she doubted herself, he reminded her, gently, always, that her work mattered. But the more she leaned on him, the more something inside her stirred with uncertainty. "You're always there," she said quietly, "like right when I need someone." Liam looked down at his cup, then back up. "Is that a bad thing?" "No, it's just rare." She didn't say what she was really thinking. How do you always know what to do? Why does it feel like you've been orchestrating something I don't understand yet? Instead, she reached for a folded piece of paper in her coat pocket. "I got the confirmation," she said. "Moralo and convened is giving me a solo feature next month." Liam's eyes widened with genuine pride. "Emma, that's incredible." She nodded. "But it terrifies me. I have to finish 6 pieces in 4 weeks. And after what happened with Sophia, I can't shake this fear that someone's waiting to take it away again." Liam leaned in slightly. "They won't. Not this time." Emma hesitated. "You sound so sure." "I am," he said, a little too quickly. She studied him, noting the flicker in his expression, an emotion he almost hid, almost. "Liam," she said slowly, "why do you care so much?" He didn't answer right away. He looked out of the window, watching a man struggle to parallel park between 2 taxis, then back at her. "Because I've seen what the world does to people who create from truth. It either lifts them up, or tries to break them before anyone else can notice. You're the real thing, Emma. I just want to see you make it through." Her breath caught at his words. There was something different about Liam. He wasn't like the other people in the art world, the ones who smiled too widely and disappeared when things got hard. He didn't want anything from her, or, at least, it felt that way. She reached across the table, her fingers brushing his. "I don't say it enough, but thank you for everything." Liam's throat tightened. "You don't have to thank me." But he didn't move his hand. Later that evening, back at her apartment, Emma set up her easel in the living room. She lit a candle, turned on a Nina Simone vinyl, and sketched until the sky outside turned indigo. She found herself thinking about Liam's stories, how vague they were. He never mentioned his job, never talked about his past. When she asked, he always pivoted back to her, listening with that kind, quiet focus. And yet, he never flinched when she talked about being broke or struggling. He never asked for anything, but something about his eyes, his restraint, made her wonder. She stared at the unfinished canvas, charcoal in hand. Who are you, really? Meanwhile, Liam sat on the edge of his bed, phone in hand, staring at Emma's contact photo. He wanted to tell her about everything. The truth was, his entire life was built on strategy, precision, and control. But with Emma, nothing was calculated. Nothing was safe. She saw through things, saw into him. And if he told her the truth now, who he really was, would that trust survive? His thumb hovered over the call button. Then he set the phone down. Not yet. Liam stepped out of a midtown meeting, adjusting the collar of his dark overcoat as a cold wind cut through the concrete corridors of the city. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He didn't need to look to know who it was. Sophia Monroe. She hadn't contacted him in months. Not since the gallery scandal began to unravel and her stolen work drew scrutiny behind closed doors. But now, out of nowhere, she wanted to meet. The text was blunt. Saw your name tied to the Moralo roster. We need to talk. Coffee. Today. 3 p.m. Prince and Grove. Liam's jaw clenched. Sophia never reached out unless she wanted something, or was about to threaten someone. He debated ignoring her altogether, but something told him she wasn't bluffing. At 3:05 p.m., Liam walked into the rustic cafe on the corner of Prince and Grove. Exposed beams, Edison bulbs, vintage jazz murmuring through speakers, it was the kind of place meant to feel disarming. Sophia sat near the window in a tailored coat, her platinum hair twisted up effortlessly, as if she hadn't just sabotaged someone's life weeks earlier. She sipped her espresso like a queen awaiting a subject. Still predictable, she smirked when he approached. I came to hear your threat, not your opinion, Liam replied, cool but firm. Sophia tilted her head. No small talk? He didn't sit. She leaned forward, folding her hands. You've been sloppy, Liam. I know it's you behind Emma's little glow-up. The sales, the connections, the studio restoration. I did some digging. Liam didn't flinch. Careful, you're accusing me of being generous. Oh, I'm not accusing. She slid her phone across the table. On the screen was a list of shell company records tracing back to one of Liam's oldest investment accounts, the one he'd used to anonymously purchase Emma's work. I wonder, she said slowly, how Emma would feel knowing her humble friend is actually Liam Carter, the same Carter who sold a startup for $240 million and disappeared from tech like a magician. Liam's face darkened. You tell her, or I will, Sophia continued. But not before I let the art world know you've been manipulating her rise from behind the curtain. Think about how that'll play. The poor struggling artist who only made it because a billionaire played puppeteer. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Destroying me won't save her. It'll ruin you both. Liam left without another word, his thoughts spinning. He'd known this day would come, just not like this. By the time he reached his building, dusk had swallowed the skyline. The city glittered around him, cold and indifferent. He poured a scotch but didn't drink it. Instead, he stared out the window, wondering how everything so carefully built was now hanging by threads of silence and trust. He could come clean, tell Emma everything, but if he did it now, after Sophia had unearthed it, it would feel like damage control, like a lie wrapped in confession. And, worst of all, she'd doubt everything. The compliments, the comfort, the care, all the times he was there for her. Would it suddenly feel transactional? Meanwhile, Emma worked late into the night, headphones in, brush in hand. Her solo show was weeks away, and the pressure both thrilled and frightened her. But tonight, she felt lighter. She glanced at her phone once, tempted to text Liam, then smiled to herself. She didn't want to depend on anyone, not even him. But she was beginning to want to know him, for real, not just the quiet protector, but the man behind the walls. At that same hour, Sophia stood in front of a mirror in her high-rise condo, rehearsing a smirk. Her press kit for Stolen Light was nearly complete. The campaign was slick, the controversy calculated, and now, with Liam in her grip, she was ready for her final stroke. The difference between Emma and her? Emma painted from pain. Sophia painted for power. And power always knew where to strike. Liam sat alone in his living room, the city's skyline glowing faintly through floor-to-ceiling windows behind him. The untouched scotch on the table had gone warm. His phone lay screen down beside it, Sophia's threat still echoing in his mind. He'd built his life on control, careful moves, clean exits, silent generosity, but this time his silence had grown heavy, dangerous. He had lied to Emma, not directly, not maliciously. But omission, he now realized, had its own weight, and it was crushing him. He stared at the unopened envelope he'd prepared the night before. Inside was everything. The business filings linking him to her early sales, a letter explaining who he really was and why he had stayed hidden. He'd meant to give it to her, that day at the cafe. But her smile, her trust, it had stopped him cold. Now, he didn't know if it was courage or cowardice that kept him quiet. Across the city, Emma worked under the soft glow of a desk lamp, paintbrush tapping rhythmically against her newest canvas. Her apartment smelled of linseed oil and lavender. The colors tonight were bold, rich crimsons and burnt oranges, emotions she couldn't quite name pouring onto the page. But something tugged at her thoughts. Liam. She hadn't heard from him since the afternoon before. No check-in, no coffee invite, nothing. And something about that silence felt off. She picked up her phone twice, hesitated, then finally typed a message. "Hey, everything okay?" It was short, cautious, the kind you send when you're trying not to seem too eager but care too much to stay silent. No reply. Not that night. The next morning, Liam sat in the back corner of a private legal office downtown. Cam had joined him, flipping through documents while glancing occasionally at his boss's tense posture. "You're really going through with this?" Cam asked quietly. Liam nodded. "If Sophia makes good on her threat, Emma's the one who'll suffer the most. I won't let that happen." He paused. "File the preemptive disclosure. I want everything ready. Financial records, gallery purchases, the restoration funds. If this gets out, I want people to know the truth." Cam hesitated. "You sure she's ready for it?" Liam's voice broke just slightly. "I'm not sure I am." Later that afternoon, Emma walked into the gallery office at Moralo & Coney, hoping to pick up her exhibit layout. Instead, she found Patricia, the gallery's operations manager, with a grim expression. "You didn't see the article?" Patricia asked, handing her a tablet. Emma's heart sank. It was a feature piece in an independent art blog. "Hidden Hands Behind the Canvas. Is Emma Blake the real talent or a manufactured success?" The article was laced with insinuation. An anonymous benefactor, rumored to be a reclusive millionaire, had orchestrated her rise. It cited unnamed sources, gallery insiders, and speculative connections to Liam Carter. Emma's fingers trembled. She scrolled, half in disbelief, then froze. There, embedded in the piece, was a photo. Liam, at a Devereaux event last winter standing beside Brooke Whitman, one of the very curators who had discovered Emma's early work. Her breath caught. It couldn't be. Not Liam. But the pieces. They began to fit. She left the gallery without a word, walking aimlessly through the city, heart pounding like it wanted to escape her chest. Had he lied to her this whole time? Was she just some kind of project? She replayed every moment, his comfort, his encouragement, his timing, the money, the connections, the silent rescues. She stopped outside a small bookstore, leaned against the brick wall, and dialed his number. It rang twice. Then, "Emma?" His voice was soft, hopeful, but even that was a betrayal now. Her throat tightened. "Is it true?" she asked. Silence. "Did you buy my work? Were you behind the gallery invites? Did you lie to me, Liam?" He didn't deny it. "I was trying to protect you," he said finally. "By hiding from me? I didn't want you to think it wasn't real. You should have trusted me," she whispered. "I thought you were different." And then she hung up. For the first time in weeks, Liam sat down hard. And for the first time in years, he didn't know how to fix it. The atrium of the Westbrook auction house buzzed with anticipation. It was a marquee night. Collectors, critics, and socialites gathered beneath crystal chandeliers, sipping champagne and eyeing the curated gallery of pieces up for bid. Among the featured works were paintings from Sophia Monroe's controversial Stolen Light collection. A sleek stage had been set up near the front, ready for her remarks. Emma stood near the back of the crowd, heart pounding against her ribcage like a war drum. She hadn't come to be seen. She came to see, to confirm with her own eyes that the woman basking in stolen praise was showcasing her stolen soul. She'd barely slept since the article broke. Her mind had been a battlefield of betrayal and confusion. Liam's silence afterward only deepened the ache. Now, as Sophia stepped into the spotlight in a satin crimson gown, applause rang out. "Thank you," Sophia beamed, soaking in the admiration. "This collection is a reflection of personal truth, of reclaiming light after years of silence. These works have lived inside me for so long, I'm grateful to finally share them." Emma felt her stomach turn. That was her phrase. Reclaiming light. She had used those exact words in a journal entry from 3 years ago, one she'd shared with Sophia in confidence when they were still students. And now, here it was. Packaged, monetized, weaponized. Emma stepped forward, not even realizing her feet had moved. The crowd parted slightly as she approached the edge of the stage. Eyes turned. Sophia's smile faltered. "Emma?" she said, as if surprised to see her. Emma didn't raise her voice, but the room seemed to hush around her. "You didn't paint these," she said. "You copied them." A ripple moved through the audience. Cameras pivoted. Sophia chuckled, feigning disbelief. "I beg your pardon? You stole my sketches. You stole my words, my work, and you knew exactly what you were doing." A nervous laugh escaped Sophia's lips. "You have no proof." Emma's voice trembled, but she stood tall. "Actually, I do." She reached into her coat and pulled out a folder, one she'd kept sealed until now. Inside were side-by-side comparisons of her original concept drawings and Sophia's final canvases. Dates, notes, archived student critiques, everything. She handed it to the moderator beside the stage. He flipped through the pages, brow furrowing. The room murmured louder now. Whispers, gasps. "Emma," Sophia said, voice tighter now. "This is petty. You're threatened. I get it." "That's enough." The new voice cut through like a blade. Liam stepped forward from the side of the room, his presence calm but commanding. He wore no designer suit tonight, just dark slacks and an open-collar shirt, the man behind the curtain stepping into the light. "I funded her early sales," he said, "not to manipulate, but to protect her, From people like you." The entire room turned to him. "I didn't want credit, but I'm done staying silent while opportunists steal from real artists. Emma Blake's work stands on its own." He held up another document, one that traced Sophia's gallery uploads back to dates after Emma's originals had been catalogued. It was irrefutable. Sophia's expression fractured, a crack in her polished mask. "You set me up," she hissed. "No," Liam said. "You exposed yourself." Security and gallery staff began whispering urgently. A representative from the auction house stepped forward, collecting Sophia's pieces with haste. Emma stood frozen, every emotion crashing over her at once: vindication, disbelief, and something more complicated. She turned to Liam, the weight of everything between them still unresolved. "Why now?" she asked quietly. He looked at her, eyes honest. "Because I should have done it sooner." Emma sat at the edge of her bed, the soft lamplight casting long shadows across her apartment walls. Her coat still clung to her shoulders, her hands still shaking from the confrontation hours earlier. Her phone buzzed with a flood of messages: gallery reps, supporters, curious bloggers, but she ignored them all. She could only think of one thing: Liam. Liam, who had orchestrated her rise. Liam, who had protected her and lied to her in the same breath. She closed her eyes and tried to sort the whirlwind of emotions curling inside her like smoke: relief, betrayal, gratitude, anger, heartbreak. They all tangled together, impossible to separate. She had dreamed of justice, and tonight she got it. But the price? That was still sinking in. The knock on her door came gently, almost tentative. For a long moment she stayed frozen, unsure if she even wanted to answer it. But something deeper than logic, a muscle memory of trust, pulled her forward. She opened the door. Liam stood there, not in control, not confident, just quiet. His coat was damp from the light drizzle outside. In his hand he held the envelope he had once meant to give her. "I wasn't sure you'd open the door," he said softly. "I almost didn't." A pause. "Can I come in?" Emma stepped aside. He didn't sit, neither did she. The silence between them was thick but not hostile, just heavy with the weight of everything unsaid. "I meant to tell you sooner," he began, voice low, "but every time I looked at you I thought, if she knew who I really was, would she still look at me like that?" "Like what?" she asked. "Like I was someone worth trusting." Emma looked away. Liam set the envelope on her table. "That's everything. The timeline, the purchases, the connections. Nothing was ever meant to deceive you. I saw how much your work meant to you, and I didn't want to taint it with the idea that it came with strings." Emma crossed her arms. "But it did come with strings. You just held them in the shadows." "I never pulled them," he said gently. "I just held them to keep you from falling." Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. "Do you have any idea how hard it is to believe in yourself when the world tells you you're only valuable because someone more powerful said so?" Liam's voice cracked. "Yes, that's why I didn't want you to know." Emma's shoulders slumped as the fight drained from her. She wanted to stay mad, wanted to yell, to make him feel the ache of being misled. But the truth was, every time the world had tried to break her, when Victor harassed her, when Sophia stole from her, when doubt crept in, Liam had shown up. And not once had he asked for anything in return. That counted for something, didn't it? "Did you ever think," she whispered, "that I might have trusted you anyway, even knowing?" "I was afraid," he admitted, "not of what you'd think of me, but of what you'd stop thinking about yourself." Emma's lips parted, but no words came. Instead, she sat down slowly, hands resting in her lap. I don't know if I can just forget all of this, she said honestly. I don't expect you to, he replied, but I do know I didn't fall in love with a millionaire. She looked up. I fell in love with a man who showed up, who listened, who believed in me before I knew how to believe in myself. Liam's breath hitched. Emma. She shook her head, stopping him. I just need time, she said. He nodded, stepping back toward the door. I'll wait, and with that, he left, leaving Emma sitting in the quiet, still unsure, still spinning, but, for the first time in days, not entirely alone. It was Sunday afternoon when Emma called. Her voice on the line was steady but soft. Can we talk? Liam didn't hesitate. Name the place. She chose a quiet bench in Riverside Park, shaded by a canopy of elms and far from the noise of downtown. The wind off the Hudson had a bite, but Emma wore her usual army green coat and clutched a cup of coffee like it was armor. Liam arrived 5 minutes early, heart hammering like a warning bell. He found her already seated, sketchpad closed beside her. She didn't rise to greet him, and he didn't push. Instead, he sat down beside her, leaving a respectful distance between them. I've been thinking, Emma said after a long silence, about how much of my life has been shaped by other people's choices. My dad leaving, my mom getting sick, Victor, Sophia, you. Liam turned to her gently. Emma. She held up a hand. Just let me finish. He nodded. I used to believe that control was a luxury I didn't get to have, that I had to take what I was given, survive it, and move on. Her voice faltered slightly. But now I realize, some people choose to give away control. You did. You could have told me the truth, but you didn't. I thought I was protecting you, Liam said softly. I know, she replied, and maybe you were, but what I needed wasn't protection. It was partnership. He looked down at his hands. I owe you the whole story, he said finally. No edits, no omissions. She turned toward him, expectant but guarded. Liam took a breath. I built my first company in college. Code, software, sleepless nights, classic story. I sold it before I turned 30, made more money than I knew what to do with. At first, I tried the usual route, houses, cars, events, but none of it filled the silence. He paused. I fell in love with a woman named Claire. She was an art therapist, grounded, brilliant. She didn't care about the money. She cared about people. She saw right through me. Emma's expression softened. She taught me how to slow down, how to feel things I didn't want to feel. I thought I'd finally figured it out, but when I started funding programs for schools and art centers, it got messy. Investors pulled support. Claire was accused of benefiting from insider connections. The press turned it into a scandal. It tore us apart. He stared out at the river, eyes distant. After she left, I disappeared. Not from the world, but from the version of myself that people had learned to expect. I stepped out of the spotlight, stopped doing interviews, sold my remaining stakes. I told myself I'd just help from the background. Quietly, no attachments. Emma whispered, until me. Liam nodded, until you. She looked at him for a long time, her eyes searching his face like it held a map she hadn't seen before. I don't know if I'm ready to forgive everything, she said, but I understand it now. He exhaled, relieved. That's more than I deserve. They sat in silence as the breeze stirred the fallen leaves at their feet. Emma finally reached for her sketch pad, flipped to a blank page and handed it to him along with a pencil. Draw something, she said. He blinked. Me? You've seen me for months. Let me see you. No filters, no strategy, just what's in your head. He smiled faintly, then slowly began to sketch. The lines were unsure at first, then firmer, more confident. Emma didn't peek. She just sat beside him, sipping her coffee and letting the moment breathe. Because sometimes healing didn't come with answers. It came with willingness. And both of them, finally, were ready to begin again. Victor Ashford sat at the head of a polished glass conference table, tapping his pen with deliberate rhythm. He was surrounded by his team, lawyers, PR strategists, and 2 gallery consultants, each nervously flipping through thick folders of damage control plans. Across the room, Liam Carter stood tall, silent. Beside him, Emma sat with her hands folded in her lap, steady but unblinking. The sunlight pouring through the floor-to-ceiling windows caught her cheekbones, but her eyes were sharp, focused. "I'll say this once," Victor began, voice calm but laced with disdain. "You've stirred enough noise, but you're not the first to throw accusations. You don't have proof that I orchestrated Sophia's campaign or tampered with Emma's studio." Emma leaned forward. "You had a key. I didn't need to catch you in the act to know you left the door open for someone else to do the damage." "And the silent partnership in her gallery lease?" Liam added. "We traced it through 2 holding companies and found your name buried under Ash and Fair Development. That's not a coincidence. That's intent." Victor gave a slow smile. "You people love stories. Unfortunately, the world runs on contracts, not accusations." Emma pulled out her phone. Then maybe it's time for a different kind of story. She tapped the screen, and the audio file began to play. It was a recording. Sophia's voice, unmistakable, brimming with false confidence. "Victor said he'd handle it. Emma won't be able to trace a thing back to us. By the time she figures it out, I'll have already sold the collection." The room froze. Victor's mask slipped for half a second, then returned. "Do you think a recording will hold up? It's inadmissible without context. Anyone could have spliced that." Liam stepped forward. "That's why we're not suing you, Victor." The lawyers stirred. "We're going public." Victor's face paled. Emma stood slowly. "You've silenced artists for years, manipulated, underpaid, and humiliated them into thinking their careers depended on your approval. But you don't own anyone's light, not anymore." Victor turned to the PR rep, who already had her phone out, whispering frantically. The energy in the room shifted. He was no longer in control. Emma continued. "I've lined up interviews with 3 major outlets, not to ruin you, but to expose the pattern. I'm not your only story, Victor. I'm just the one who stopped being afraid." Liam placed a folder on the table, filled with statements from other artists, anonymized but powerful, accounts of mistreatment, sketchy contracts, threats. "This isn't about revenge," Liam said. "It's about accountability." Victor rose slowly, smoothing his tie. "You're both making a mistake. You think the art world will rally behind you? It won't. It feeds on power, on gatekeepers." Emma stepped closer. "Then it's time to build a new gate." Outside the building, Emma and Liam stood in the crisp air, the wind threading through their clothes. "That was bold," Liam said with a half-smile. Emma shrugged. "I'm tired of being quiet." He looked at her with a mix of admiration and something deeper, respect carved from everything they'd endured. "I have a proposition," Emma said suddenly. He raised an eyebrow. "I'm listening. I want to start a co-op for underrepresented artists, a space that isn't owned by anyone powerful but supported by people who actually care. And I want you on board, not to lead, to build with me." Liam smiled, more genuine than she'd seen in weeks. "I've been waiting for you to say that." They stood there for a long moment. No titles, no lies, no shadows between them. Just 2 people who had lost and learned and loved. "Let's get to work," she said. And they walked off, side by side, into the light of something new. 6 months later, The soft golden light of spring spilled through the tall windows of the converted warehouse on the Lower East Side. The once abandoned space now thrummed with energy, voices, laughter, the scent of oil paint and clay dust mingling with fresh brewed coffee. Emma stood in the middle of it all, surrounded by canvases, sculpture pieces, and murals in progress. Her eyes moved across the open space, pausing on every artist hunched over their work, some with headphones in, others deep in collaboration. A few tables away, a high schooler from Queens was receiving feedback on her charcoal sketches from a visiting mentor from Harlem. This was the dream. And it was real. Studio Aurora had officially opened 2 weeks ago, a non-profit collective built by artists for artists. Emma had poured her heart into every inch of it, negotiating leases, designing the space, selecting residents, building a culture. Liam had stayed true to his word. He helped without overshadowing, funding the launch without taking credit. His name wasn't on the door, and he didn't want it to be. But he was always there. Emma felt his presence before she saw him. He walked in quietly, a box of supplies under one arm and a takeout bag swinging from the other. "You brought lunch," she said, grinning. He nodded, setting the bag down. "Falafel and those ginger lemon cookies you like. Thought you could use a break." "You thought right." They sat at one of the communal tables near the back where the windows opened onto a small rooftop garden they'd only just started planting. The city hummed below, but in here time moved differently. Emma unwrapped a sandwich, then looked at him. "You know," she said, "when we first met, I thought you were a little too quiet to be real." Liam chuckled. "That's fair. I spent a lot of years hiding behind quiet." She tilted her head. "And now?" "Now I'm learning to show up." She reached over, brushing his hand with hers. "You've been showing up for a long time. I just didn't see it clearly until I stopped being afraid." He looked at her, eyes steady. "Afraid of what?" "Of letting someone in." She smiled faintly. "Of trusting that what we were building wasn't just a season, but something that could last." Liam's voice was barely above a whisper. "I've been thinking about that too." They sat in comfortable silence, watching as a couple of young artists hung fresh canvases along the far wall. A soft jazz melody played in the background. It felt like a new chapter, not just for the space, but for both of them. "I want to show you something," Emma said suddenly. She stood and disappeared into the back office, returning with a flat-wrapped canvas. She peeled back the paper. It was a new painting, one Liam hadn't seen before. A streetlight at dusk. Beneath it, two figures sat side by side on a bench, the sky behind them full of soft oranges and indigo. Their faces weren't fully detailed, but the emotion was unmistakable. Connection, earned and quiet. Liam stared at it, moved. "You painted us." "I painted what it felt like," she said, "not just what it looked like." He stood, eyes still on the canvas. "Can I ask something crazy?" "Always." "Would you consider co-hosting the summer residency program with me? I know you're the face here, but I want to be more than just the guy behind the curtain." Emma smiled. "Liam, you're not behind anything anymore." He stepped closer, nervous now. "And maybe after that, maybe we find a place, not just for art, for us." Her reply was simple. "I'd like that." She reached for his hand. Outside, the clouds broke, sunlight pouring through the windows like a blessing. They had built something together, something stronger than betrayal, louder than secrets. Love, not painted or posed, just real. And just beginning. Thank you for watching till the end. If this story touched your heart, made you think, or brought a tear to your eye, that's why we tell it. Stay with us for more powerful stories. See you next time.